long day, I got a lot to say. It feels like I'm carrying a 2-ton weight. I go to see a friend.
Hello, I'm Msgr Patrick Winslow.
And I am Father Matthew Kauth.
And we are speaking from the rooftop.
A podcast brought to you by 10 Books, in which we invite you to join our conversation out here in the open air,
where we look out upon the world around us from the rooftop of the church and share with you what we see.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen till I know.
Well, hello there.
Greetings, Father Winslow. How are you?
I'm well. How about yourself?
I am doing well on this third day in the season of the desert.
Now, let's put this into perspective. It's a liturgical season.
It is.
Not an actual reality beyond a liturgical season. We are not actually meriting our salvation.
Are you trying to...
I'm just putting everything into context that this is, not the spiritual Olympics.
No one ever said we're meriting anything.
I know, but
although
some people...
merit is part of the game.
Well, I'm not saying it isn't.
It's not part of salvation, but it's certainly part of the game.
I'm just simply saying, some people, especially, young types, not like you, but young and enthusiastic, will, have a long laundry list of things they're going to do, things they're not going to do, and they're going to just whip it all together, and they're going to be spiritually united to the cross of our Lord, which is great. I don't know why you need to reserve that for Lent. There should be...
Because the church reserves it for Lent on some level of more intensification. Because there's
that's true. It's a time of renewal.
Opposite side of sanguines that say, I don't want to be like those cholerics that actually do something during Lent. I will just be kind. I will just choose every day what I'm going to do as the wind blows.
Because the cholerics prefer to be a loveless, sorrowing group.
Not on the contrary. All of us are attempting, all jokes aside, to do something quite simple. That is to say, everything in the course of a year that was unessential somehow becomes essential for us. In other words, oftentimes the things that we genuinely enjoy, the things that we take our comfort in, they tend to take without being checked a kind of center stage. And that's sort of the point, right? That looking at all the various things in one's life and saying, I didn't realize that thing became essential to me. Didn't realize it became center stage when it was just something that I genuinely appreciated, genuinely enjoyed, what have you. But the kinds of penances that I think that are, at least for a normal, healthy choleric, are to say, what are the ways in which Christ is not the center? And so the church enjoins upon us 3 kinds of penances, which are prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. So doing something in each of those categories. I don't know about you, Father, but when I was in the parish, every single time this season rolled around, and I asked people to consider what they were going to do, what the Lord wanted them to do, to unite themselves to Him during this season, and I said, it doesn't mean that you're giving up chocolate. That's fine when you're 5. Almost every single head, looked around, either laughed at someone that they knew or put their head down. So is that you, Father? Are you giving up chocolate? Is that what you're doing for Lent?
You're asking me? I would not put chocolate on a chopping block. That is just too heavenly to give up, even during Lent. No, actually, in all seriousness, I was asked recently, did a television interview, which is typical this time of year.
Yeah.
We get some people from the local media and local news that want to talk to a priest. They call the diocese here and want to have someone on the show to talk about the meaning of Ash Wednesday, Lent. It'll happen again during Holy Week and Easter, which is great. It's wonderful. We're really glad to be able to talk through the local media outlets to the people who are listening that we might not otherwise be able to speak to. But in a way of offering a very quick explanation, I put it this way. I think that through the course of a year, we quite simply drift.
Yep.
It's a bit of a nautical analogy, I suppose. We're sort of setting sail and we drift a little bit of our course, and we have to kind of take out those instruments the way Shackleton and his team did, and
Talking about pain.
line it up.
Shackleton.
Well, that's true. Talking about pain, they lived a penitential existence for quite a number of years there. But to take out sort of the instruments, if you will, check it up against the light of the gospel, to see where you're currently standing and how you have to navigate back on course, and the types of things that you can do to bring you there. I think that those are some of the better penances, right, that are tailor-made, that can help you navigate back on course. So the types of penances for a choleric would be different, say, than the type of penances for a sanguine person or a phlegmatic person. All of those things could be tailor-suited. So it might be harder, for example, someone who's a choleric, somebody who's already driven toward discipline, to do something that isn't in that lane, that is a little more freewheeling. Like, for example, I remember talking to you at one point years ago where you decided when you would eat based upon circumstances. Mm-hmm. So you were not willfully in control. You were not in control, right? And I would imagine that's hard for someone who's more of a choleric, to be not in the driver's seat. Whereas that might be easier for a phlegmatic person or something like that.
Yeah, and one of those times, it was the first year we had the seminary going, which was really interesting because I had the first class of seminarians with us. And one of the things that we did, we did eat at regular times, but I think I started this with you at St. Thomas, but then in a different vein. And then when I got to the seminary, we did something that was rather trusting, as it were, in divine providence. We had a pantry full of food, a little room, of the normal stock and trade things you'd have in a home. And we decided we were not going to go to the grocery store during Lent. Which was really, really interesting because at first you're like, whatever, it's fine. There's plenty of food in the pantry.
Yeah, you get back to basics pretty quickly.
All of a sudden you want to make a recipe or you want to cook a dinner. Like, I don't have any of that. And you keep running out of things, right, until you're down to eating things that you would have sat there until the nuclear holocaust was over. That's because we never would have eaten them. Right. But then we ran out. We simply ran out. And it was, one of those things as a leader thinking, am I bringing these guys into a bad choice here? I mean, obviously it's not desperate. I can run out and go to the store if we have to. Yeah. But we tried it. And there were a couple times we were hungry. But 99 times out of 100, what happened was someone would just stop by with something, or all of a sudden, the local parish had a big thing, and then they had all this leftover food, and they would still want this food. Like, the guys were, of course, like, we'll eat anything.
It's going to be like Lord of the Flies when that dish arrives in the house.
Yeah, so that was a fun one, just to trust in divine providence.
Yeah, and I think I think that some of the penances that are clever actually, they work better. Yeah. Because it involves more of you in a creative way, rather than, I'm just doing this again.
Yeah, and there might be some distinctions to make relative to, are you doing a kind of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving to feel the pinch, to identify with the sufferings of Christ, to actually suffer with him, as it were? Or are there certain things you're choosing because they simply need to go forever? It's like, I want to change the course here, genuinely change the course, such that when I get to Easter, that habit is actually lost of whatever the thing is, or can be now at least curtailed from becoming something of an obsession. I think that I've always approached Lent, as a bit of an Olympics, as a training mode, and there's something to be said for that. And I think that the older I get, and perhaps maybe on some level the less inclined that I am to do that, I'm trying not to avoid doing that, but it had a way of creeping up on me, thinking to myself, oh no, it's coming. Right. Oh no, it's coming.
Rather than looking forward to it. And when one does approach it in such a way that I'm only in this life, especially as a priest, because I want to know and love Jesus Christ. That's why I got into this in the first place. Yeah. So if I can do things during this season that are actually going to assist me to know and love Jesus Christ, then that I should look forward to that and not be something that I'm dreading. I mean, it's an opportunity to get back to basics, to reacquaint yourself with the purpose, to adjust for the drift that's occurred over the, since last Lent and Easter. Those things are, I think, important. We constantly need to begin again. We constantly need to do that cyclic process of evolving and growing so that we can become more whom God created us to be. And that's never going to stop. That shouldn't stop, regardless of our age or measure of perfection or lack thereof. I mean, that's an ongoing process. And in a certain sense, the liturgical year reminds us of that because it's cyclic, it's circular.
Sure.
That we're not repeating this just to go, because some people were held back a grade and we're all doing it again, right? We're doing this because every one of us needs to repeat it, because every one of us wants to advance a little more, and because doing it again and again and again helps us all move forward a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that we all kind of catch the fact that Advent is a time of a sort of preparation for a particular feast. I'm not sure we always associate Lent with the fact that you're actually preparing to celebrate the mysteries of your redemption.
Yeah.
And that's, if there's anything worthy of celebrating, it is that I
Right.
actually have been and am being currently saved. And you can't, it's a strange thing how you actually have to prepare to celebrate something. Like, we understand it perhaps a bit easier when it comes to the thought of decorations, like, Advent, because in a couple months you and I will start decorating again for Christmas.
Of course. Slowly but surely.
You can kind of understand it, right? Things, the music, the sights, the sounds. Whereas Lent is barren. There's nothing to actually prepare except you, and that's a bit of a harder thing to prepare.
But don't you find it interesting that prayer is lumped in, with fasting and other penances and sacrifices and almsgiving? Because I actually look forward to, and I am grateful for this, I look forward to redoubling my efforts
and prayer.
in my prayer life.
Mm-hmm.
That's a place where I'm nourished.
Yeah.
And it's taken a long time, I think, the course of my life, where I can say that I wish I had more time.
Yeah.
Rather than say, oh, I've done what I need to do today relative to prayer.
Yeah.
But I wish I had more time, or quality time, right? Because sometimes, when you reach the end of the day, there's no quality time left. The brain is mush.
Yeah.
The body is saying, just stop.
Do you remember in the breviary, there's this reading about prayer, and it says, and the best time for prayer is before bed because the mind is quiet and ready for attention. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's the worst.
I can't remember which spiritual author that was, but maybe he wasn't a saint. Maybe he didn't make it.
Yeah, well,
maybe he did. Maybe that's why he was a saint.
Yeah, God only knows. Absolutely.
No, I agree with you. I, as a matter of fact, most of my penances, in some ways, are an attempt to jettison certain things that are unessential, and to carve out space in which I can actually spend more time doing that.
Right. And that's the part that you look forward to.
Yeah.
Right. For me, it's like, okay, that's a gift.
It's a gift.
That's a gift.
Yeah. And it makes sense, right? I mean, the Lord doesn't say, go sell all you have and sit in the dust.
Right.
Go sell all you have and follow me. Like, the whole reason we're doing the X, Y, and Z is because I want the A. I want him. And so those things are supposed to make me available, not just time-wise, but also attention-wise, free-wise, et cetera, to be able to pray better, which I think most people experience on any natural level when they're fasting more, even the secular realm. People talk about it as having greater levels of concentration, having more control over the body in that sense. But it certainly does prepare you to pray well.
I think that some people, when they hear the word prayer, they think of the sacrifice of prayer, which there is that, right? So in
terms of sacrifice of time, or
sacrifice of time, attention, and maybe in some cases you have ritual formulas and their offerings.
Yeah.
Right? You're like a living votive lamp with your words, your mind, your heart, your thoughts. And that can seem like work, because by the nature of it being a sacrifice of prayer, it is something like work. It is the sacrifice that is being offered. But I think when you and I talk about prayer, maybe we take something for granted that most other people don't think the same way. Because when we talk about prayer, yes, we have our obligations relative to the divine office. We have certain devotions like the rosary and other things that we keep as part of the fabric of our day. We have time spent in front of the Blessed Sacrament. But it's truly in the time of meditation and contemplation where it's a bit of an oasis in a desert. It's a place of refuge. It is a place of nourishment and of strength. And it's that you're always wanting to get back to. Because I would say that the divine office a lot of times is a sacrifice of prayer. It is something to which I'm committed by virtue of my orders,
right.
The promise I made at ordination.
Praying for the faithful.
And I'm praying this for the faithful, whether I feel like it or not, and whether or not these psalms are resonating with me personally. Totally irrelevant. This is what I do as a priest, as a sacrifice of prayer. But when I can get to that space where it's my time, where it's me praying with God, it really kind of goes back to some of the analogies that Charles Péguy in Portal of Mystery of Hope, that poem that I got tuned onto years ago when we were in seminary, about that relationship between prayer and sleep. And there's a sort of rest.
Is there a difference for you?
We have friends. We won't name them because we've been rebuked for naming him too many times, but prayer and sleep are practically synonymous. But I don't mean, I mean it as an analogy, not as a synonym. Where the body finds rest in sleep, the soul finds rest in prayer.
Right.
And that rest is so important that I can't imagine not having it. But it did take a while, I would say, through formation,
to build that habit up.
To develop the habit and so on. But I'm not sure that people are hearing when we say the word prayer, that type of prayer.
No, I think that in general, most people use the word prayer for where the word comes from, which is a kind of asking.
Yeah.
That
I pray thee. Yeah.
You see it when you come into the parish, right? As a parish priest, you watch the faithful come in. They come in, typically most people will, they'll kneel down for a few seconds. See a kind of rapid sign of the cross, and they got a routine. Yep. Some will do it for 30 seconds at most and then just read the bulletin. But those who are attempting to actually communicate something to God, what they're typically communicating is their difficulties, their worries, their struggles, and they're asking for grace, which is fantastic. It's petitionary.
And mercy.
It's beautifully petitionary. But that's not the same thing as spending time with him. In communion, which is what you're saying.
Right.
And that does takes a little bit of practice, as it does with anyone that you're going to be in a relationship with. But that's the thing that without which I can't imagine living life anymore.
Right.
The other day you can't
imagine your soul.
I can't imagine
getting through a day.
No.
Sorry, the other day you were saying.
Well, just again, because it's Lent, right? And so it was Ash Wednesday. And typically Wednesday night is the night that we, priests and the faculty, et cetera, get together for dinner, which is great. It's a wonderful social event and some time to spend together fraternally, but we don't do it during Lent. And as a result, I was in the chapel with the rest of the men, and I never go on Wednesday because of this dinner. And on Wednesday, it's Lectio Divina after Vespers. So in other words, we spend time simply meditating on the sacred scriptures. And it's the only time we do it as a communal body. And because I'm never there on Wednesday, I don't do it with them. I do it, but I don't do it with them. And it's an hour, basically, that we just meditate on the scriptures. And 45 minutes. And I remember I was so excited. It's like, oh my gosh, I get this extra 45 minutes of time. And and it was a pin drop quiet in there. And I never looked at anyone else. I don't know what everyone was doing in terms of their prayer, whether they were reading the scriptures or just meditating or whatever. But I remember hearing the knock, which is the signal to get up. And I thought, what are you talking about? I just got started. It was so refreshing. I loved it. And I love time with my brothers as well. It's not an either or, but I would certainly, I think both of us are basically saying we enjoin upon you, if anything with your penances, to some degree, have them be geared to getting rid of things that distract you from prayer, and get some time in prayer. I almost never hear anyone say, what I'm doing for Lent is a holy hour. What I'm doing for Lent is reading the scriptures.
Or stopping by a church for 15 minutes every day. Yeah. Right? I mean, you can do that. We go to the store for more than 15 minutes every day. Well,
do it on the way to the store.
But just stop in. And even if the doors are locked, sit in your car outside that church, put a timer on, clock 15 minutes.
Yep.
It's not even, you can do 10 if you had to do 5. You could increase the time. It's going to be 5 minutes a day. Then second, third week of Lent, it's going to be 10 minutes a day. Something along those lines. And it will help develop the muscle and the habit. I do believe when people have an opportunity to enter into a church and breathe the air, that there's something instinctively, something at the level of the soul that makes them want to stay.
Yep.
And that's why I'm a big proponent of going to a church. Now, that doesn't mean you can't pray at home. It doesn't mean you can't pray in the car. It doesn't mean you can't pray all these places. But there's just something about going into the church.
Agreed.
The same thing about the rosary. I would say this, if you're trying to cultivate the type of prayer that we're talking about, which is more on the level of contemplation and meditation, the rosary, I think one of its great powers, among many beyond my sight, but one of its great powers is the ability to take any average person and pull them into a taste of both meditation and contemplation fairly simply. They can, if you follow the recipe, if you will, that is to say the prayers as words flowing out of your mouth that are using a part of your brain that doesn't interfere with your conscious mind, then it allows for meditation. Mm-hmm. So you can sit there and speak these prayers as a bit of an hourglass that's passing through your fingers as you go from bead to bead, knowing that these are holy and sacred words that are falling off the lips of Our Lady or falling off the lips of our Lord. And during that time, take the conscious part of your brain and begin with meditation. And then at some point during the meditation, say it's a sorrowful mystery and it's the carrying of the cross, and some point during the meditation, you might just be caught momentarily in a gaze, just a stare. And there you're getting a small moment of something like contemplation. Yeah. And then your conscious mind can shift maybe to another aspect or another dimension of the carrying of the cross. Before you know it, 10 beads are just, you just fly through them.
Right.
And praying a rosary in a given day, maybe on the front end when you first start, seems like quite a commitment. But after so much time has passed that you've done it as a matter of habit, it's quick.
Yes, indeed.
It's just quick. And you get a taste for the contemplation and the meditation.
No, it's a good way to put it. And I think one way to articulate that from one of the lives of the saints, St. Catherine of Sienna, of whom I'm a huge fan, she says that different kinds of prayer, as everyone would admit, right? When it comes to vocal prayer, where we're actually saying certain prayers, she says that if you don't intend to say what you're saying, I don't know why you're doing it. She's just like, that's not praying.
Right.
Now, on some level, we could make a distinction there and saying, if you're trying, you're doing it, at least you get the merit, and the Lord will shine on you. You're attempting to do something. But she's saying, begin by trying to say what you mean and mean what you say. And then when the soul gets visited, it's a beautiful line. When the soul gets visited, that crutch of simply intending to attend and intend the words that are being spoken, when the soul is visited by God, you can begin to slowly let go of the bastone, she says, the cane or the walking stick, because then the Lord is the one now assisting you. And then you might even be simply carried at some point. But when that ends, if that ends, gently, you go right back to where you were, attending to the words. So, and what Father's saying about, what you're saying about, what's Father's saying about, what you're saying about the, all of a sudden I was thinking about the faithful listening. Usually we're just talking to each other.
That's right.
But I was thinking about them now. What you're saying about the rosary is that was this thing, not only is it laden with so many graces by our Lord, but is that simple means that everyone has access to. So the greatest of theologians and the simplest of persons in a village, we all have the same weapon, all the same means, and it works for everyone.
Yeah, it takes something that is really quite elevated, like contemplation, meditation, and just makes it generally accessible in the form of the rosary, and cultivates the taste for it. And then, as a result, you might recognize that. So say you pop in a church, and say you take a place in a pew, and say you just get lost in a stare, looking into the sanctuary, surrounded by hopefully a beautiful church, in the presence of our Lord. That stare is not nothing.
Not nothing.
That's that is the place you want to be.
Right.
And it's not just a glazed over look. It's not just a pause of your mind. That is being in the presence of God.
It's your eternal occupation, hopefully, right?
Well, that's right. That's something that you're hoping for. And I wonder how many people have had experiences like that. That stare is a distraction from prayer. Right. I need to open up my devotional book.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a big fan of devotional book and things. And one of the great things about devotional books is that you can be praying against a part of yourself. So sometimes I think prayer is a way of waging war on yourself. So doing the litany of humility.
You sound off like a choleric all of a sudden.
Well, I'm surrounded by them, so something's about to rub off. Praying the prayer of humility. The better part of me is calling out the worst part of me.
Right.
And and I'm not doing it in a way to make me feel bad about myself. I'm doing it in a way.
That's what I'm for.
Yes, you do a great job. So I have that base covered. No, I'm doing it in a way that calls to mind where my soul wants to be. And when I articulate, let's say, the Litany of Humility, there's something liberating that sets me a little more free from those things about which I am fighting to be less prideful. So when you're saying, may I not receive any, may I not do any good act for its rewards. May I do, whatever the litany of, it's really, in fact, I wonder if I have it right here on my phone. One of our priest friends gave it to me as a penance, and I loved it.
It was Cardinal Mary Duval, I think. Right?
That's the one.
Right. Yeah. I do want to say that I have encountered a number of people, lay people, that have developed quite a serious prayer life, and a consistent one at that. And I think that the majority of the time when I ask them, when did you start that? How did you get started? And almost everyone that I can recall, I was just thinking in my mind how many persons I know, and when I asked them that question, it was one thing that they tried to do for Lent.
Interesting.
That became part of their life, that they can't let go of now.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Like, this would be a great one, like to pray the Litany of Humility every day. Just that. So here, I pulled it up on my phone, and it's, you're absolutely right. So Cardinal Mary Duval. So, O Jesus, make me humble of heart. From the desire of being esteemed, deliver me, O Jesus. From the desire of being loved, deliver me, O Jesus. From the desire of being extolled, from the desire of being honored, from the desire of being praised, from the desire of being preferred to others, from the desire of being consulted, from the desire of being approved, from the desire of being humiliated, or rather from the fear of being humiliated, from the fear of being despised, from the fear of suffering rebukes, from the fear of being calumniated, from the fear of being forgotten, from the fear of being ridiculed, from the fear of being wrong, from the fear of being suspected, that others may be loved more than I, and it goes on. As you read through that litany, it's liberating.
Yeah.
It entices you to surrender to the things that are otherwise consuming you in all the wrong ways.
Right. Yeah.
And that's another, benefit of prayer. It can be corrective in that way.
Yeah. No, I think just to conclude my thought on the matter is that we all love our devotions. We all have the prayers that we love the most. We all have, just don't make it the object. Right? Don't make it the objective to get through a list.
Right.
Father and I had a wonderful guy that was in seminary with us. I remember every morning he would stack his books up to get through his devotionals. And it probably took an hour and a half.
It's a job.
Just to it's like getting the work done.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there's not some merit in that, but at the end of the day, I think there's an awful lot more benefit of being a bit more like a child that sits on your lap and when children want your attention and they grab your face with both their hands and they're like, look at me, when you're trying to do something else. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to grab. It's not that God isn't looking at us, but we're not really looking there. And so to grab both of our hands in prayer and to say, I'm going to look at you and you're going to look at me and we're going to talk to each other.
Right.
I think that 5 seconds of that is worth, with
so much more
any more amount. And yet the devotions can become springboards for that. What you were just saying about living with humility. Wow. Talk about a self-examination, as you say, the better part of me trying to drag up and ask for grace for the worst part of me. And it opens up all kinds of topics about which you can speak to God.
It's like being cleansed as the words pass over you. And that's, truly another function, another way in which, prayer can be truly healing.
He stopped that prayer because that last line he had written in there, I saw on his sheet, it said, from the desire of being like Kauth, deliver me, O Lord.
Oh, I say that prayer every time.
You don't have the desire. Anyway, well, get started on your Holy Lent and
have a good Lent.
You to persevere.
Truly, the spirit of joy, because it's getting back to the basics. It's readjusting. It's taking the opportunity to double down. And some of the harder disciplines it's like going to the gym. It's building up that muscle of virtue and trying to attack the vices. And so those things are great.
But it's not to build up the muscle to stand in front of the mirror.
No. Well, the type of mirror you want to stand in front of, when it comes to virtue, is definitely not the physical mirror. You'll lose the war when it comes to a physical mirror.
Both of them.
But the spiritual mirror will always get better. It can always get better.
Amen.
You can always get better.
Amen. All right. God bless you all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of From the Rooftop.
For updates about new episodes, special guests, and exclusive deals for From the Rooftop listeners, sign up at rooftop.podcast.com.
And remember, for more great ways to deepen your faith, check out all the spiritual resources available at tanbooks.com.
And we'll see you again next time.
From the Rooftop.